Hello and welcome to Movie Night Spotlight. I'm your host Dave Lindsay, and joining me via Google Hangout is Mr. Liam O'Leary.
Sup diggity.
How's it going, sir?
Not bad.
It is the 75th anniversary of Batman this year, and DC's, like they did last year with the 75th anniversary of Superman, they're kind of celebrating it throughout the year. Just the other day, I hung out with our buddy David Ciccarella, and we watched the new animated Batman movie, Son of Batman, and kind of discussed the animated Batman universe. And in talking with you the other day, you suggested why not dive into the Batman cinematic universe, which is awesome. It's a lot to discuss there.
Wicked awesome. Even the stuff that's bad, it's so bad that it deserves a discussion because of how bad it is.
Well, you didn't want to start with the Adam West Batman, which I'm kind of disappointed with, especially with Six Batman. The series is finally being released on DVD later this year. You got a whole new line of like 66 Batman memorabilia coming out. You got the 66 Batman comic book series being a pretty big success for DC right now. Kevin Smith and Ralph Garman are about to release their Batman 66 Green Hornet crossover series. But you said, no, let's jump right into 1989 Batman, which is fitting, because if you do the math, on June 23rd, it'll be celebrating 25 years since it was released.
Yes, indeed.
Which was a pretty big deal.
It's actually having read an article about this is what prompted me to suggest this in the first place.
What, that's celebrating a 25th anniversary?
Yes. That was why they put it up, and having read that, that's where I kind of like, you know what? Let's revisit this. Why not?
Sure. No rules here. So you said you had read something on RGN concerning the '89 Tim Burton Batman.
Yeah. Again, and this is where I really sat back and was like, we haven't, I haven't watched this. I don't know how recently you watched it, but it's like I haven't watched this in a long time. And basically, what got me and probably a hell of a lot of people from our generation into Batman in the first place were the Tim Burton Batman movies. So I decided, why not? I'm looking at this article, and what they're basically, what they're saying in IGN was how, at the time, as I said before we started, to people, to you and I at the time, we were kids. We didn't.
I was 4. I was just about to turn 4.
I was probably at the time, I was 5 when it came out, going on 6. And at the time, we didn't realize what kind of world it was arriving into. But it basically, IGN goes into detail about how back then everyone, when they first heard A, that there was going to be a new Batman movie, and B, that Tim Burton was directing it, it met with a lot of flack. I mean, just the whole thing. I mean, what we see nowadays with with Electro being portrayed by Jamie Foxx in Amazing Spider-Man 2. To us, this seems rather commonplace now, but we don't realize just how far back this sort of thing went. And when the first, the Tim Burton Batman movie was being announced, actually, that's another thing. I'll bet dollars to donuts I'm not the only person from our generation to refer to the Tim Burton Batman movie as the first Batman movie.
Well, I'm sure people...
You corrected me on many a time.
Well, it's because, if I remember correctly, I could be mistaken here, is they had always intended the Adam West Batman series to be just a TV series, and I think they made the movie as kind of like an introduction to it before they jumped into the 3 seasons. But people, when you say Adam West Batman, they think of it as a TV show, not the movie.
Yes. It's definitely more well-known, I think, for the TV series. But I feel like that it goes to show you just how much a lot of people from our generation attach to that Batman movie.
Right.
I think that nomenclature of calling it the first Batman movie, I think, is somewhat commonplace.
Definitely, and you're right. Like from what I've heard, I mean, again, I was I was 3, 4 years old when this happened, so I don't even think I definitely didn't see it in theaters. First time I remember watching it is on VHS when my dad bought it. And so I was completely oblivious to the media surrounding it. But from what I've heard and people discussing and reading about it you're right, like when they announced it, people were skeptical, but when they first saw the first trailer for it, and they saw that they were, doing a dark Batman, it wasn't going to be the Adam West Batman. I believe the first trailer had no score. It was literally just like a minute and a half, 2 minutes of clips from the movie, and people were sold.
They mentioned that on the article on IGN. They made a point of mentioning how the first trailer had no score to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was just essentially just Batman, doing chases, beating the crap out of people, and it closes with what I'm sure at the time was the first appearance of Jack as the Joker. Saying the infamous line, "Wait, they get a load of me," and that kind of boom. That's your introduction to the Joker. That's everyone's like,
yeah.
And again, at the time, to us, it's kind of the beginning of what was, at least for a little while, successful Batman movies, and kind of the foundation for Batman as we know it today, as far as movies go. But at the time, people were really skeptical about it. They were afraid. Number one, they were afraid that we were going to get another Adam West style, really campy, goofy Batman movie. Because, in fact, if I remember correctly, I think they may have even said that initially the studio was kind of thinking of it going that way, and Tim Burton, who they were also skeptical of, fans were also skeptical of him at the time because he was only known at the time for Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Not necessarily what you would not necessarily the kind of background you would hope for going into a Batman movie.
Right.
It really kind of helped cement their fears of another goofy Batman movie, especially where at the time this movie was being produced, this was around the time you started seeing, like, I think The Dark Knight Rises, the graphic novel come out. I think year one
came out in the early '80s.
Yeah, this is right around that time where you're starting to get the graphic novels that would become the inspiration for the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
And that's why, if you look at it, I mean, Tim Burton's Batman feels more like a Frank Miller. Not exactly. It's not as good as like The Dark Knight Returns or anything like that as far as the story is concerned, but it feels more like, Batman Year One from Frank Miller as opposed to, as you're saying, Adam West Batman.
Definitely, and Tim Burton, especially because, and that's why so many people were so concerned about Tim Burton, because they were, Batman had finally gotten back to to being really dark, and people were really kind of getting behind that. And the idea of it, oh god, none of the stupid, boom, Zork sound effects, flying out of the air, and also the, crap that you saw during the Adam West years. You feel like, oh god, not this again. No, please, no.
I mean, people are skeptical on Michael Keaton too, because not just about Beetlejuice, but he's like Mr. Mom, and more of doing more comedies than as opposed to, he's not exactly an action.
Dangerously.
Yeah, so. Not that I should say like, 80s was like Arnold and Sylvester Stallone. It shouldn't be a Batman shouldn't be one of those types of action guys, but.
But you're right. There were people who were also skeptical of Tim Burton's choice of Michael Keaton.
Yep.
Because they're like, oh god, Mr. Mom is going to be Batman? Really? Really?
Let's just put Tom Hanks in there. He did Money Pit.
Yeah, I mean, screw it. Why the hell not? And that's kind of how people were feeling at the time. They were really skeptical of this whole thing until that trailer came out. That first trailer where it's basically like, yeah, we mean business here.
Yeah.
And really kind of let everyone know just how serious Tim Burton was really taking this. And, I mean, you see it a little bit in his other movies, but part of me, looking back on his filmography, because you and I, we've watched a good number of his stuff. This is before I think this was before he did Edward Scissorhands.
Yep. That was
Uh,
early
but but I
90s.
feel like this is definitely one of those movies where you can really see uh, Tim Burton's how much he likes to be that kind of dark, kind of go into that uh, spectrum of filmmaking.
Yeah,
You can
definitely.
even see in the two thugs at the very beginning of the movie. You can see the classic Tim Burton. They all have like the raccoon eyes and the bags on their eyes and all this other stuff that you see in so many of his other movies. That I feel like it's always there. You can see a little bit of that style of his, even from the beginning of the movie.
Definitely. You definitely can. I mean, again, like you and I are a little skewed on this because we grew up with it, so we're watching stuff like if you watch Edward Scissorhands, Ed Wood, Sleepy Hollow, even his take on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I know a lot of people despise. Um, Sweeney Todd, a lot of his stuff, you just look at it and you're like, all right, that's a Tim Burton movie.
Definitely. And you can see it also in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, you can definitely see it in Beetlejuice, but again, he was still establishing himself at this point. Like people knew Tim Burton because of stuff like Beetlejuice and Batman, but he still had the ability to change his style up at that point. Where now it's just like that's just his thing.
Oh, definitely.
You watch Nightmare Before Christmas and like, yeah, that's Tim Burton. It's just like no question.
Yeah, there's so many of these movies, and you can just half the time just by who's in it. I mean, chances are, if you didn't know who was directing a movie, if you have a movie with Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp in it, there's a good chance Tim Burton is directing it.
Probably.
And that's just how it works. But it's I just find it very interesting to see to see that, especially like looking at it in hindsight, seeing how much skepticism there was about this movie going in, where now it's just like I feel like a lot of people's faith in the franchise, it's kind of the model that people were hoping for when Christopher Nolan took over directing them. And I think a lot of people were kind of like, okay, it can be kind of like the first two Batman movies. We're getting back on the right track.
Yeah, I think people are always going to be skeptical. I mean, they're skeptical right now with Ben Affleck going to be Batman in the next Man of Steel, and there's the Justice League movie coming out in 2016 and 2018. People are always skeptical with the character. I think that's the nature of the beast with these superheroes. I mean, Iron Man, one of the biggest superhero franchises. People are like, really? Robert Downey Jr., that guy? And now, 4 movies in, if you include the Avengers, people are like, who else would play him?
Exactly. There's definitely one of those. It's definitely one of those things like I imagine the same thing happened when Val Kilmer was going to be Batman. They're like, really? Okay.
I think at that point too it was tough too because it's similar. And we always use him as an example, but when you have 50 plus years now of cinematic stories to go from, it's easy to draw from. But people always do the same thing with James Bond. I mean,
Bingo.
Maybe not exactly when they passed the torch from, when it finally went from Connery. People kind of forget Lazenby there to Roger Moore. That maybe not there, but. And maybe not so much when they announced Pierce Brosnan, but I remember, almost 10 years ago when they announced Daniel Craig.
Oh yeah.
People were like, "What? Him? That can't. No, that'll never work."
He's blood. Ah.
Exactly. So it's like when you have characters like Bond or Batman or characters that have such a long history and like such a huge fan base, whether it's not, millions and millions of people that they become once the movie hits and is success, but like just the hardcore fans, it's tough when they hear someone playing the role, whether it be Michael Keaton Batman or Daniel Craig James Bond, who doesn't fit the image they have in their head, And because they're saying like with Ben Affleck Batman, he's going to be an older Batman, so people are like, are they going to be doing like a Dark Knight Returns kind of Batman, or is so. We just have to wait and see. But I think, this is off topic from the '89 Batman, but I think Affleck's going to do a good job.
Yeah, I still need to see Argo, but I have faith that he can be a good Batman.
Because look, it's more him being Bruce Wayne. Because as soon as he puts the cowl on and he's fighting some guy, it's the suit that's Batman. Like it's kind of what they say in Dark Knight Rises, that he's just a symbol. Like anybody can be doing.
Yeah,
It's just so it's like I think Ben Affleck can pull off Bruce Wayne easily. He looks pretty good in a suit.
Yeah, I think he can pull off Bruce Wayne.
He can be the millionaire playboy of the DC universe.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of Christian Bale's Batman voice.
Right.
I'm going to imagine Ben Affleck doing that.
And I think I mentioned it in the episode with Chicky there that George Clooney sounded like George Clooney. Like you got to put some different. Like even watching Batman tonight with Michael Keaton, it's like he does something a little bit with his voice, not much though between the two.
It's not as extreme as Christian Bale, but you can definitely tell that his voice is definitely different when he's Batman than when he's Bruce Wayne. And
I haven't necessarily watched all the behind the features. I mean, I know I did with The Dark Knight, watch all the behind the feature stuff, but that was more like how they pulled off all the stunts, like flipping the tractor trailer, how they blew up the hospital,
which is awesome.
How they wrote the score and everything. But I don't know if I've seen anything saying like, oh, this is how he came up with the voice of Batman. So I don't know if it was a Chris Nolan decision, being like, hey, I need you to do this with your voice to be Batman, or if that was a Christian Bale decision that Christopher Nolan liked, or if it was a group effort. Like I don't know exactly how they developed that voice, but I understand why they do it. And
it's fine. I have nothing against it, but there's definitely times where it's sort of over the top.
Yeah.
Or I feel like if it were anyone else but Christian Bale doing it, it just seems comical to me. Like the idea of Ben Affleck trying to do that, it's hilarious.
Lots of people find it comical. So 89 Batman. You and I both grew up loving this movie.
Indeed.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to just go straight through it, or do you want to just pick out your favorite scenes? Like, how do you want to talk about 89 Batman?
I suppose I kind of want to start with at least my vague memories of when I first saw it, because I didn't see it in theater either.
Right.
My parents wouldn't have taken me to see that.
I definitely saw it on VHS. The earliest movie that I can remember seeing in theaters was The Mighty Ducks. So.
Actually, the earliest movie I can remember seeing was Transformers the movie. I was literally like 3 at the time, but I can remember it.
Yeah.
We actually went to see it at the theater in Copley Square.
Yeah, I remember watching Batman on VHS though.
Yes, I actually, if I remember correctly, I probably saw it in 90 or 91 because my uncle had bought it. And realistically, to a certain degree, some of my tastes in movies are kind of influenced by him. Now that I think about it, because growing up, I knew right off the bat that my uncle was famous amongst my family for always had horror movies. He had a lot of sci-fi movies. He had a lot of like superhero movies, or at least the relatively few that there were at the time. But like Back to the Future, I borrowed his copy of it. Batman, borrowed his copy of it. Gremlins, borrowed his copy of it. Let's see, Nightmare on Elm Street. First time I saw that, it was his copy. Friday the 13th. And you're seeing a pattern here. But it was his copy. Back in '91 was the first time I actually saw this, and pretty much right out of the gate, like any semblance of me being a Batman fan at all stems from this movie. So basically, like in fact, a few weeks ago I called you and I was saying to you, man, I need to get some of the Batman graphic novels. All of that stems from this movie. That's
Yep.
how important this is as far as me and Batman goes.
Yeah, it's definitely my first introduction to the character. I mean, Ralph Garman's gone on record saying like, his Batman was the Adam West TV show. Like, I feel like for our generation, like if you weren't into the comic books, it was probably the '89 Batman that got you into it, and it was probably because it was probably the '89 Batman that got you to watch the animated series that came out a few years later.
Which is definitely influenced by this.
Yeah, at least the backgrounds were definitely influenced by the set design.
Well, the music was Danny Elfman did the music for it too.
Right. But yeah, it was definitely the production designer. Batman was Anton Furst, and you can definitely tell that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, who were two of the big guys behind the animated series, definitely at least in regards to the sets and drawing the buildings and everything, and how some of the camera angles for the cartoon was definitely taken from his production design from the '89 Batman. So, but I think as far as the story goes, I was watching this time and I was because it's an origin story, but it's not an origin story, and I think that's what's great about it. Like it kind of teases you at the very opening. They're like, oh, this is young Bruce Wayne, but then it throws you the curveball that it's not.
Yeah.
And I think jumping into him, it kind of just, it's almost like the year one story.
Yeah, kind of, because Knox is talking to the detective and saying how it's like, oh, this is like the 8th sighting in a month. So if we're using that as the timeline, it's essentially like the first month of him being Batman.
Yeah.
Essentially. Well, at least that's all we know.
He doesn't have any relationship with Commissioner Gordon. You don't get the bat signal to the very end of the movie. And I'm watching this time, and it's just like really cool. I kind of dig it that Tim Burton didn't do a traditional origin story. He hits all the points, like of trying to show like the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman, and then about 2/3 of the movie you finally do see the story of him leaving the theater with his parents and them getting shot down by Jack Napier. And this telling of it, it's Jack Napier that shoots him.
Yep.
So you do get that information on the character, but I like that it wasn't up front and they kind of just jump right into a Batman story as opposed to like, let's tell the whole origin to get the ball rolling.
There's something else I've noticed here that I never really paid attention to before, but something that I realized watching it this time around that you see in all of the others, they make a point of saying that he doesn't do it. In this, at the very beginning, the two muggers are sitting there talking with each other, and you get the one guy who's kind of pretending to just be a bum. He's sitting there, he's like, man, I don't think we should be up here. And he's telling the other guys, like, you hear what happened to the other guy? And they're like, oh, man, don't even get me started with that crap. He's like, I heard the bat got him. He's like, he fell 5 stories. It's kind of implying, and Batman later says it in his confrontation with the Joker, but in this universe, Batman will kill you.
Yeah,
that's something I had never realized before, but basically, it's kind of implied at the beginning, but Batman states it outright to the Joker at the end. He will kill you.
Well, I think it's different in this incarnation with the Joker, just because it's the Jack Napier tied to the killing of Batman, and one of the best lines or best exchanges between the two characters is at the end there, before all falling off the top of the church and all that, is when they both say, like, you created me, I created you, and that's what's great about their confrontation, like, and especially when Bruce Wayne / Batman realizes who the Joker is, and it's Jack Napier, like, he's the guy that killed my parents, like, he's already on revenge, because that's the entire thing with Batman, like, he's doing this because he wants to find the guy that killed his parents and bring justice to it. I was a little bummed because of those other ones, but again, with the two guys on the top of the building who mugged the parent parents and the little kid after leaving the theater, he kicks the one guy through the wooden door. So you assume he's not necessarily dead. He's probably just knocked out.
No, in fact, you see him getting carted away by the
hospital.
Yeah, you see him getting carted to the hospital.
And then he says to the second guy, the guy that said he wasn't real, just tell your friends, I'm Batman.
Yes.
Throws him down, and he doesn't kill him. So I feel like there's instances where they kind of played with both sides of the character and almost wanted to take him to be the full-on killer, but at the same time they do kind of stay true to Batman because he doesn't want to, he just wants to bring justice and stop crime, not necessarily kill people, except for Jack Napier. So.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily see him. I mean, with the exception of the dude that he's fighting at the bell tower who's swinging the hook at him, and Batman just kind of dongs his head off the bell and basically just drops him from the bell tower, basically like, yep.
Which because it's like
that's a damn good fight, and I love that.
Bell. I mean, Commissioner Gordon couldn't move that bell by himself, so clearly it's heavy.
Yes.
Which I just found that funny. Like, really, you think you're gonna move that thing by yourself?
Well, the thing I realized watching that scene is you got Commissioner Gordon. The guy's like in like his 50s, 60s, trying to push this.
Instead of asking the two cops for help, he's just like, all right, let's go.
The other two cops are sitting there who are clearly much younger than he is. Right. Like, no, you got this, Commish. You got this. Don't worry about it.
I doubt the three of them can move it. But what really bummed me out...
the guy out. He's trying to push the thing out of the way.
What really irked me this time is when, Batman does knock the guy's head into the bell, and then he falls down. He's screaming, and I'm just like, if somebody actually got their head, thrown into a swinging bell that size...
Oh, he'd be done. He'd be out like a light.
You wouldn't be awake, whether you're knocked out or dead. You would not be screaming as you fall down to your ultimate death, because you probably did not survive that fall.
No. If he survived that, man, he'd be wanting someone to kill him.
Him screaming just irked me. It just was like, yeah. But I think that's one of the differences. Watching it as when we were kids, you just go along for the ride. You're like, this is awesome. Where now the adults were kind of getting nitpicky and stuff like that, and we've seen it countless number of times. So you have it the second to be like, wait, that's not right.
Well, even now, I can still watch that and be like, well, I mean, the bell isn't. It's got a very tight swinging radius, and he donked him from higher up on the top, so it's not catching like as much momentum as it were at the bottom.
But there's still force behind it, and
there is, but Batman wasn't really swinging him that hard.
No.
When you realize Batman just grabbed.
That's what he'd at least be knocked out. He would not have he wouldn't be aware enough to be like, oh, I'm falling, and be able to scream.
Oh, I mean, even if let's assume I'm just trying to be devil's advocate here. Let's just assume at some point, say about maybe halfway down the elevator shaft, he kind of regains consciousness, maybe then, but he gets hit and he's immediately screaming.
Yeah.
There's at least got to be some gap between him donking his head off the bell and screaming as he plummets to his inevitable doom. And it's like, well, there's got to be some gap there. I mean, that thing's got to be made of like lead or iron or something. You hit your head off of that, you're going to be out for a few seconds, at least.
Right. So to go back to the beginning, it's pretty cool seeing, the introduction of the care of Batman into the movie. It's pretty cool when you just see the two goons talking on the top of the roof, and you just see him lowering himself from behind them, and then just sneak up, and they're hearing stuff, and he doesn't say a word until tell your friends I'm Batman. It's a best opening. Well, beyond like the stuff from Chris Nolan ones, like the opening to The Dark Knight and all that, but like in '89, like that was amazing.
It was. It really was. And the other thing I really like about this, part of me feels like even in the Chris Nolan ones, I don't feel like we get that. We don't get that element.
No, you don't.
In the beginning of that one, you're listening to the two guys, and between the two muggers and and the reporter Knox trying to get some comment from the detective, you get this feeling of just how mythic he has become. You know, like he fell 5 stories and there was no blood. You know, they shoot him. You know, they shoot Batman and suddenly they're running for the door and they just immediately stop. They just have that feeling of like they know something's behind them. They turn around. Batman stands back up again. And they're just like, and the fact the other mugger is like, "What are you?" And all the things that Knox is saying, like they say he can't be killed. They say he drinks blood. It's you really get the impression of just how mythic he is in the underworld. They really think that he is some sort of like supernatural entity because they just they just don't understand. You know, right. They sit there, they shoot, and they don't realize they've got body armor, so he just gets up like he's the Undertaker, and they're just like,
right.
And you really get this impression of just how horrified they are of him.
Definitely. So after that scene, we're kind of, they kind of put a hold on the whole Bruce Wayne Batman story after that opening. Beyond, like as you're saying, Knox talking about Batman, and just everybody else talking about, is he real or is he not real? You have the nice little drawing there in the office where the guy shows him the picture of the bat, and the little says it's done by Bob Kane, which is kind of.
It also helps reinforce the mythic part of him, where you get the one hand where they're horrified, of him in the underworld, and to legitimate society, he's Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I really dig when they show the picture that they have a little Bob Kane there, little reference, kind of fun. Even though it probably would have been Bill Finger that drew him, but whatever. That's a whole nother discussion. But so then you're pretty much introduced to, like I said, Alexander Knox. You're introduced to Vicky Vale right along with him, and then you get introduced to Jack Napier and see how he becomes the Joker. So, do you like those scenes? Because it's like 20 minutes before before Jack Napier falls into the acid. That before you see Batman again. Like, do you mind that?
This might be from being so attached to this movie.
Yeah.
But those little things, to me, the idea of finding something wrong with them doesn't even have space in my mind. Because to me, I feel like it's all just that's how it fits into place.
Yep.
You've seen Batman, so you get this, and again, it gives you just what you need. It shows you Batman. It shows you, for any lingering naysayers, it shows you this is a serious Batman.
It does. What I'm getting at is it's like 15 minutes before you even see Bruce Wayne again, and then it's like 20 minutes before you even see Batman again, which is a good chunk of time without the title character in the movie. And I understand that they're putting in place like the Vicky Vale storyline, they're putting in place the Jack Napier Joker storyline, which obviously is necessary.
Very.
And they're it's still kind of they're using it to still keep the myth, the is he real, isn't he real aspect of Batman alive in the movie until you meet Bruce Wayne. Even when the first time you meet Bruce Wayne, you're like, Rick Miller, I was like, do you know where he is? And he's like, I don't know. And you haven't even truly met Bruce Wayne yet when you first see him on screen.
Yeah, you haven't actually gotten a proper introduction of him, saying that he's Bruce Wayne. But to me, it all fits into place.
It does.
Because there's so many other things that you're trying to get at this point. You're trying to get the sense of just how plagued by crime the city is. You're trying to get this idea. You're trying to get across how this is very early in Batman's crime-fighting career. So people don't even, most polite society doesn't even think he exists, and the ones that do, as you see in the scene at the chemical plant, you see that Commissioner Gordon, he says to the young officer, he's like who is that guy? And the commissioner's like, I don't know. But until we find out, keep a lid on it. So basically, they're not even. He's like UFOs to the government. They don't even acknowledge that he exists yet.
Yeah.
They're trying to get that across. They're trying to get the relationship between Vicky and Bruce and trying to deal the seeds of that. And
they don't really touch on that because that doesn't come until after the chemical plant incident. Because you've only, you just because before that happens, you see Vicky ask where Bruce is, and she wanders off, and then they're going through that room, and that's when he finally formally introduces himself to Vicky and Alexander, that he is Bruce Wayne. So you don't even have any real relationship build-up between now they've actually met.
No, but again, that's what I'm saying. You've seen the seeds of it. It hasn't even sprouted yet. You've just seen the.
I would say the seeds come at the dinner scene. That you really.
But they arranged that date. I think.
I'm just saying, there's barely any relationship development.
No, yeah, exactly, barely. All right, you just get very, very little bits of stuff.
Just an introduction. There's no relationship.
Yeah, exactly. You're just getting introduction to these things.
He's just smitten with the fact that he's Bruce Wayne and he's
the more important thing, because you have such a small window to do it, you're getting a much better introduction to the relationship between Boss Grissom and Jack Napier, and kind of the little. You're also seeing the little scene with where it shows Harvey Dent, giving the speech about how he's going to, take down Boss Grissom. And you see Jack there with Grissom's girlfriend, who is also Jack's girlfriend, and he's like, "Please, if this clown could touch Grissom, I'd have, handed him his lungs by now." Jack really seems to like to hand people their lungs in this movie. I notice. He makes that reference at least 2 or 3 times about doing something involving people's lungs. But I feel like that they put more emphasis on that because you only have a small window before he becomes the Joker. But it's showing you all the things that lead into what got him into the chemical plant in the first place that lead him to becoming the Joker.
But I'm just saying, my point was just it would be like if you had, 78 Superman, and he gets to the Daily Planet and you just do 20 minutes on Jimmy Olsen. You know what I'm saying?
As far as the dearth of Batman at that early point in the movie, I will refer to something I saw once on a discussion panel about wrestling. I'm going to do a callback to one of my favorite things. And basically they explained the reason why Andre the Giant was such a successful attraction in the 70s and the 80s was because Andre the Giant, they always he would go from one territory in the country to another. He'd be loaned out to other territories, so that he was essentially on a world tour, or a nationwide tour. He'd do the Deadass main base, which was back home, which is Boston, New York, Philly for the most part, that region, and then he would go up to Montreal, and then he'd go over to Toronto. And then he'd go over to Calgary, and he'd go down to California, and he'd just go around to all the other territories in the country, so that he was only there for a couple months at most. He'd do a handful of appearances, but every time you knew Andre was coming to town, everybody came around because you only saw him so often. That's the whole point. You when you have an attraction like this, you don't want to saturate everyone with him. You want to just give them little bits just to whet their appetite until the main event. I
disagree with you in the terms of Batman, though, because you have to establish the duality of Bruce Wayne. And so you while you're establishing everybody else here, it's all right, now you have Batman as a character, but it still takes you another 20 minutes to meet Bruce Wayne. And that's what I'm getting at. It's if you're going to show that, and they do get to the duality of him and how he struggles to, do I tell Vicky? Do I not tell Vicky? Do I go to lunch with her? Do I go, see my parents? Where they got shot down? It's you do see that aspect of him, but to just not have the character in anything for 20 minutes. Where I mean, I understand. I mean, I love the setup. I love the story of Jack and Grisham, and the film noir aspect of the movie, where it's like you're seeing the crooked cops and everything. I love the all story. It just, like I'm saying, to go 20 minutes without the title character in any shape or form, it's kind of a letdown at this point. Where I'm like, come on, like you gotta introduce Bruce Wayne a little bit faster.
Yeah, I guess. But
I'm not saying bring him back as Batman, but I'm just like, have Bruce Wayne in there like a little bit sooner. Like,
well, I feel like, I mean, I feel like at the time they're making a point of trying to establish these other characters that it's all like a big clock. All these little pieces all fit together into this big story of Gotham and why Batman is necessary.
No, I like I said, I enjoy all that story, and like even like you brought Harvey Dent's speech and everything, and they make a point of showing the empty chair for Bruce Wayne. I'm just saying, it's the movie is called Batman, and to leave the title character out for so long is in the opening of the movie. Like you open up strong, and then you don't see the main character again for 20 minutes.
As you bring this up,
that would be like in Doctor No. If you don't see James, they get the introduction of James Bond at the poker table within like the first 5 minutes. Imagine in Doctor No if you don't see James Bond for the first half hour.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. But what I was going to say was, as you bring this up, I think to myself, this would be an even better discussion if we were to watch Batman Returns.
Oh, totally.
Because this discussion is absolutely central to that movie.
Well, yeah, with Batman Returns, it definitely you see more that Tim Burton's more interested in the villains than he is with Batman. Batman's just the gateway to telling the story of the villains.
Yeah, and they actually, on the IGN article, they mentioned just how big it was that they had Jack as the Joker.
Oh, it's huge.
They basically said that Jack's turn as the Joker was like the first time you had seen a villain who's truly like a character of his own since Goldfinger.
Right. No, and remember how long we were saying, prior to Heath Ledger's turn as the Joker, like even before there was discussion of somebody else playing the Joker, we were all going like, if they ever do another story with the Joker, no one could do as good as Jack. Like
nobody, impossible. And I remember we had this very discussion.
Yeah.
When first time like Heath Ledger, I don't think he can do better than Jack.
The guy from 10 Things I Hate About You, yeah. But so Jack did a fantastic job.
He did. I mean, basically the fact that we were having that discussion at all, of like no one being better than Jack, is a testament to just how good he was as the Joker.
But at the same time, I'm watching.
A decade and a half later, people are just like, yeah, see that? That's Jack as the Joker.
But to go off what you mentioned before, it's like the only other real live-action version of the Joker we had seen was Cesar Romero in the Adam West Batman, and again, it was the goofy, all I do is laugh Joker. And here I was like, Jack's better than that, but it's still like, man, like the performance is great for Jack, it's great for the movie, but as a character, I was like, man, this isn't quite the Joker I want to see at this point of my life. Like, I'd rather it be like the Joker from the animated series, or the Heath Ledger type Joker character. It's just, I don't know.
I really appreciated Jack's turn as the Joker here, because I feel like you're really. I actually feel like he's. I think it's a little bit like watching it as a kid. I don't think I truly grasped just how dark Jack's version of the Joker really was.
Yep.
You watch him in this. He is a complete homicidal maniac. Like he
is.
you can see when he reintroduces himself to Grissom, you can see he's just like
he's coming through
away
the
from
shadow,
exploding.
Yeah.
And when he starts to gun him down, I mean, he literally goes from being like just kind of reserved. You see a little flash from being angry. He's like, you screwed me over, a woman. Oh, woman! And then he's
foreshadowing's fun before that. Before he has to go to the chemical plant and he's flipping the cards and he stops on the Joker one and he's already wearing the purple suit. Like,
I love that suit.
The foreshadowing. I mean, obviously, it's the one time where you can be on the nose with your foreshadowing and just be like, yeah, this is the guy who's going to be. If you don't know already before we do this, this is going to be the guy that's going to be Joker.
Yeah.
It's still fun, he does that, and then the great thing that sets up the scene you're talking about is when the girl walks in. He's like, oh, honey, we're having a meeting. Can you go into the other room? And Jack kind of looks at her, and then Grish, he's looking at Jack, looking at her, and it's like they all know what's going on. And
yeah.
It's that subtle moment that is more fun in that scene. But then the scene you're talking about was fantastic with how slow they do the final reveal, even though you can see that he's got the white makeup on.
And that's actually you see just seeing a little bit of him in the shadows. He's even scarier when you're seeing him in the shadows, because and they made a point of him really being in the shadows to just show you even in that shadow you can see his face. You can see that white ghostly face just kind of smiling at you from the shadows. You're just like, holy fucking shit.
And then when you see him again behind the desk and he's looking at the newspaper, and he just makes that weird boom. You're just like, he's lost it.
That random, like,
yeah.
And he just cracks himself up. And again, as a kid, I truly didn't appreciate just how creepy, just how crazy he was. Because that collection of scenes where he kills Grissom and then kind of reads the newspaper and just kind of gets kind of like, really? Oh, way they get a load of me.
See, I'm like torn with that at this point, because I agree, like, it is kind of creepy, but at the same time it's also kind of comical.
Well, it is, but I'm sitting here looking at how he goes from being kind of quiet and reserved, just a little bit angry, goes back to being quiet, and then he just kind of goes completely 180 and just like, and just starts killing Grissom, just guns him down, laughing his ass off. Thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. To him, it probably is. And then just like, click, click. Oh, so you're out of bullets. What a day. And I mean, when you really sit there and look at it, it's like he's just completely out of the gate. He's gone. He's lost. He's completely insane at this point. And it's something that I didn't appreciate back then, but I look at it now and I love it, because he's not as how can I put it? He's not as I'm trying to find the right word here to compare him to Heath Ledger. I guess Heath Ledger's was.
It's tough when you can't find that word. Like, I understand what you're probably trying to get at, but I don't want to try and fill in the blank.
I guess the best word I can think of is I really can't think of it. But there's the little differences between him and Heath. I mean,
well, yeah,
he's a little bit more grungy, I guess. And there are definitely times where he seems a little bit more chaotic, really.
Definitely.
But
I mean, the craziest thing that this Joker does is mix, shampoo with, dish soap and toothpaste.
Well, he does well to make shampoo with it.
Well, no, that's what freaking Bruce Wayne says. Is he's like he mixes like shampoo with like hand soap and like two other things, and with the three cleaning products
It
become
makes them
poison.
poisonous.
Yeah, that's a little bit different than blowing up a hospital.
Well, there's also the part where he tries to, turn everyone into smiling corpses at the bicentennial celebration.
It's still it's different levels.
It is, but I feel like Jack's. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be quite as chaotic, and Heath is definitely. He definitely seems a little bit more unhinged, I want to say. And he seems maybe a little bit more unpredictable, maybe.
And that's what kind of bugs me at this point watching Jack as the Joker, is because he does do the crazy Joker, as you're talking about when he kills Grissom, and he's laughing about it. But then, watching like the animated series and Mark Hamill do the Joker, and watching, Heath's Joker, obviously, like these other iterations of the character, who's like, it seems like he can go back to just being Jack real easily, and then he can flick the switch back and forth real quick. But sometimes it just feels like he's still being Jack as opposed to a full-fledged Joker.
But this is where you look back to some of his other scenes where he's sitting there having the meeting with all the other bosses that he is now essentially kind of lord over.
Yep, that's what I was going to get to next.
And you got that one guy who's just like, I'm watching this stupid grin.
Right.
And just seeing Jack there is like, life's been good to me. You see that scene, and even there, where he's now got that like permanent grin on his face, he's creepy.
He is.
And then he's like, well, we'll just shake hands and call it a day. And he's literally frying this guy, and he goes from being just kind of like, trying to be this really slick, trying this kind of backhanded, boss where he's kind of basically saying to them, yeah, I'm in charge now, so you're going to do what I say, la 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 la, being really kind of slick about it, to suddenly just being really like, ooh, I got a live one here, and he's just he goes completely. He starts like he starts singing and dancing, and then he just whoop, boom, burnt skeleton sitting in the chair, and he's just laughing it up, and then he starts talking to the skeleton, and basically makes a joke to himself and just explodes into laughter, and you can hear him in the background laughing it off. I feel like that you see a lot more of this crazy side to him than I think you might be willing to give him credit for.
No, you do, but I'm saying it's just he goes from one extreme to the other really quick.
He does.
And the next time you really see him was when they're doing the press conference outside the building, and they do the whole mime thing, and he takes the quill. He calls it just a pen, but I guess that's the proper term for it would be the quill. And he sticks it right in the guy's throat.
Yeah, just skewers the guy with it.
He makes like the comment, and then he does a little wave to Bruce as he drives off in the limo.
Those machine gun toting mimes.
Yeah, which it's really funny that like everybody but Bruce Wayne ducks as like bullets are flying.
He guns down like 3 cops and like the guy's 4 bodyguards or his lawyer, what have you. They gun down like 8 people. And Bruce is just kind of slowly marching towards him. This look like, do I know you? And his mimes are just riddling the place with bullets, and everyone else is ducking for cover.
Yeah, I guess what I'm gonna is like, I kind of hate knowing, like, in the animated series it's kind of like he's just the Joker. In Dark Knight he's just a Joker. You don't know his origin story.
Nope.
So. In here, in Batman, it's kind of cool seeing the origin of Joker, and knowing that he's Jack Napier and he's the guy that killed Bruce's parents. But I feel that's also distracting to the character of the Joker, because now the person you want to have the duality of the original and other side of him is Two-Face, which you sort of get with Tommy Lee Jones and Batman Forever. But I don't know. I kind of wish it was. as you're saying, in '89 I didn't know better, but now having read more Batman stories and watched more Batman cartoons and what have you, having that duality of the character being Jack Napier and Joker, it's kind of what's distracting me, I guess.
I don't know. To me, I feel like there's a sort of duality, but I feel like, I mean, once he officially becomes the Joker, you see it in a lot of his little scenes, with Bob, where they're just kind of hanging out and watching TV and this, that, and the other thing. He's still
the picture of Vicky and
when he's following Knox around, under the auspices of trying to see what Knox knows about Batman, and he suddenly stumbles upon Vicky, and before where he's just like looking at Bob's taking pictures of Knox, trying to keep track of him, and suddenly he starts cutting her picture out, and he's like gonna make like a collage of her, wherever the hell he's doing with it. He goes from being like kind of serious, like okay, what's Knox doing, to suddenly just being like, ooh, who is this?
But see, that's the other thing though, is he could have been like that as Jack Napier. You never got, it goes so quickly from him just hanging out at a meeting that he's clearly bored with and he's frustrated that he's not in charge, to being the guy who is in charge, that you're just assuming that's 100% Joker.
Well, you're right. You didn't see a lot of Jack beforehand, but what you did see of him, he wasn't manic, right? As the Joker, he's manic.
He's pulling those levers at the chemical plant. He's going crazy.
No, I think that's him trying to provide a means of cover. He's trying to create as much chaos in the plant to cover his tracks.
It is, but I'm saying is he's
slow the cops down so he can get out.
He's doing that, but it's like he's essentially being also kind of crazy in his actions and just doing it. I understand it's a cover, but clearly there's that other side to him that he's just like shit, like, and he's pretty. I don't know. I kind of, like I said, all I'm saying is I kind of dislike having the two personas of the character. Where I wish it was just, at this point, having learned what I know now about Batman, I wish it was just Joker.
Well, all right. What I take from seeing the earlier scenes of him, where he's just Jack, where he hasn't become the Joker yet, he seems very, very collected, very reserved. He sits there and he's kind of throwing his weight around to the corrupt cop, and even though the cop's like kind of trying to push his buttons a little bit, he's like I don't answer to psychos and this and everything. Jack is very like, and he's like, oh, whatever, and he shoves him back. He doesn't get very animated about it. He just shoves the cop back, and as the cop pulls his piece, all of a sudden Bob just shows up right behind him, kind of like.
Well, Bob was like one step behind him anyway.
Well, but
I get what you're saying. Well, I'm saying I think it's my point is just simply I find it distracting knowing that he was, like I said, just at this point in watching it, obviously in '89 and up until up until recently when I was watching it didn't phase me. Just watching this time, like I kind of hate knowing who he was before he became the Joker.
Well, that was my point, is that you when you see him in the plant, even though they realize they've been ratted out, that the cops are in the neighborhood, he doesn't panic or anything. He's like, we've been ratted out here, boys.
Joker doesn't panic either. I mean, freaking at the end there, at Bob the Goon, he's just like, give me a gun, and he just shoots Bob. He's not panicked at all.
No, but what I'm saying is he's not really doing anything anything that's really kind of out there. He's like, okay, we've been ratted out. You need to be careful, guys. And they try to make for the exit.
But I could see him having.
But the first time
you're referencing the conversations with Bob the Goon after like seeing he's frustrated that they do something crazy and Batman gets all the attention instead of it being about Joker. I could see him having a similar conversation about like that which you don't get to see with him and Bob the Goon before he becomes the Joker.
Well, again, when like I'm talking when they're in the chemical plant.
I get what you're talking about. I get exactly what you're saying. My point is, under that circumstance, when he's obviously the acid messed with his brain.
Oh, definitely. You see it when he comes out of surgery.
But what I'm saying is, he does, from what you see of him as Jack Napier to what you see of him as the Joker, it's not dramatically different. It's not like he went from being, this 100% clean-cut dude to this completely insane person. So that's why I feel like you're not seeing like a full, it's just a full embodiment of the Joker because you have that reference point of him as Jack.
Well, see, I look at this a little bit differently because I still feel like what we see of him as Jack, with one exception, where he shoots the corrupt cop, where he just doesn't like him. He's like, you know what? And guns him down from. Incidentally, he must be a friggin' sniper with a pistol, because he guns him down from all the way at the top of the chemical plant.
That's the other thing that bugged me at the end when he pulls out the pistol with the long.
I loved that. That was awesome.
It would probably leave like a little ding in the bat wing, and yet it freaking blows the thing up.
Funny enough.
The Batwing, he literally targets right on him. The red dot, and it goes boom, 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 right on him, and he still misses. I'm like, it's just not right.
Actually, that's further evidence that he was out to kill Joker, because he's shooting like bullets and missiles at him, and Joker's like, yeah, you missed me.
Yeah.
But incidentally, about the giant super pistol that he's got, at the time, we had the trade paperback, like the little mini graphic novel, the graphic novelization of the movie, and it gives a little bit more, it gives a little bit more explanation as to why it takes up the Batwing, because apparently it fires like explosive shells, I guess. Like in that scene in the graphic novel. Joker pulls out a super long pistol, he shoots him with it, and Batman's like, explosive shells! And then the Batwing crashes into the ground.
Yeah, here it's just...
That is why that happens.
But here he just shoots a bullet.
Yeah, you don't know that it's like an explosive round. You just think it's just some super bullet. But, fair enough. But back to...
We got to wrap this up because we've been spending like half an hour just on our debate about the Joker.
You can keep going.
We can stand. All right, but yeah, let's just wrap up your final point.
Well, it's just for the most part, I feel like we see Jack being largely very, very cool, very calm, very reserved.
I agree.
But when he becomes the Joker, we see him being very goofy, very manic, and very he just does things as he feels like, very impulsive. Perfect example, Bob, gun. Boom, it just blows Bob away.
But I could see Jack doing that too. In that situation, I could see Jack just doing that too, making this, especially because, like I said, when you see him earlier, he's not in power, he's not in control of the situation. And that's frustrating him, but he understands he has to play the game, so that's why he is. He's doing exactly what he knows he has to do to try and eventually become the boss of the organization. When he's a Joker, and he can just take a gun and kill down his henchman, his right-hand man.
True.
I
suppose that you're right. If we'd seen Jack in a different position, would he have been doing a lot of the Joker things that he was doing?
That's what I was saying earlier. The only other time you saw him hanging out with Bob the Goon was when he was talking with Eckhart. So all the conversations that you had, whether it be him taking and punching the TV to knock it out with the glove apparatus thing there.
That was awesome.
That's definitely Joker-ish, not Jackish.
Very much. Shooting the TV with a flare gun.
Right.
That's Joker-ish.
But like the conversations they're having. It's like I was saying, it's like that. It wasn't, that extreme of a change from one to the other. I feel, that's why it's tough until he does the laughter or he does the whole thing with one of the best scenes in the movie, which is at the art museum.
I love that whole scene.
And Vicky throws the water on his face, and he go, that's the Joker. But him flipping through her photos, am I talking to Jack or am I talking to Joker? That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah, I can see that. Where he's like, crap. That could very easily be Jack just.
He might be saying it a little bit more. Like I said, that's why I don't feel like it's too different from one to the other. It's definitely a difference, but that's why I'm like, I'm using the duality example, because it's the same thing with like Harvey Dent and Two-Face. It's like he has to do when he's Harvey Dent, just Harvey Dent, he's kind of like, he's a professional lawyer, a district attorney. When he becomes Two-Face, when he's talking as Harvey Dent, he's got that little bit different way of delivering his lines, and obviously when he's being more Two-Face, it's the extreme.
Very much so.
That's why I feel like they kind of did a Two-Face version of the Joker in this movie.
See, I look at it the other way. I feel like in Batman Forever, I feel like they did a Jokerish version of Two-Face.
That's a whole different discussion.
Yes. We may have to do all of these.
We may have to. But yes, the art museum scene is definitely one of the best. It has one of the slowest car chases in movie history. The Batman entrance, because we have to talk about Batman at some point in this podcast.
Yes, we do. Well, we were discussing earlier how long it took to get to Batman, so it's apropos that we take a while to actually get to talking about Batman.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of, before we get jump too far into the action scenes, what do you think of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne? Like, do you like his delivery lines? Do you think he was too cheerful? Did he have enough of a dark side to him with the whole scarred from the killing of his parents, or?
I think so. You see sort of, you almost see like a duality within Bruce Wayne, not simply him, Bruce Wayne and Batman, but like two different sides of Bruce Wayne. You're seeing like the public side of Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
Where he is relatively cheerful, and cheerful is a little strong of a word, but I say relatively. But he is, he is this guy who, kind of sits there and he talks to his guests and kind of making jokes, to some of his guests and to Alfred and what have you. But then when you see him in dealing with anything about his parents, he's very, very somber. I mean, he sits there and makes a point of lying to Vicky Vale basically so that he has a whole day or a whole couple of days for him to just sit there and
Alfred blows his cover.
Yeah. I was literally thinking that when I saw it, like, wow, way to just blow his whole cover, Alfred. Way to go. I mean, you know what he's gonna do. You know that he's out there like doing this little memorial service to his parents. I imagine this is not something he just decided to do. This is something he's been doing for a while. That's a private thing for him to sit there and be like, oh yeah, no, we're not going anywhere. Come on, Alfred. Man, I've watched that and it's like, Alfred's just somehow, even though he knows everything about Batman, he's somehow not in the loop on this lie.
Right. It is pretty crazy. But I agree, he definitely kind of has like that public persona, and then that, behind the scenes Bruce Wayne aspect to him.
Yeah.
I think it's Bruce Wayne. It's not fantastic, but it's fitting. It works.
Yeah. that's the thing. I mean, it's not. He's not going to blow you away with it with him being Bruce Wayne. He's not going to be like wicked, brooding or anything. But he does it well enough that it's not it's not an issue.
Do you mind that he sometimes wears glasses and other times he doesn't?
Not at all.
I'm just saying. I mean, I haven't seen too many versions of Bruce Wayne where he wears glasses. I think this might be the only place where I do see him wear glasses, and even then, it's like when he's staring at the monitors in the Batcave, it's like, why? You presumably have 20/20 vision, unless you're wearing contacts. Why do you sometimes wear your glasses and other times you don't? I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit the character.
I don't know. But I have no.
Like Tim Burton's like, you need to do this.
Yes.
It's almost like because he does do it at one point. He's wearing them. He doesn't quite do it as like dramatically as that, but he does eventually just take the glasses and kind of have him like by his lips in the almost the thinker pose at one point in the movie. It's kind of like he purposely gave him the glasses just so he could get that one shot.
You have to. That may have been. I don't know if it was the genesis of that as kind of a pose of the whole like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the genesis of that, but it's definitely something that I feel like has been parodied a bit since then.
I'm sure.
I think Alec Baldwin parodied it a couple of times.
I'm sure. I mean, the glasses. By the way, thinking with the glasses, I'm sure it happened before Tim Burton's '89 Batman, but I feel like
the first time I remember seeing it.
There's no reason for him to give him the glasses. So we were talking about when we finally got back on Batman. We started that with the whole, the one of the best action sequences of the movie was at the art museum. He comes crashing through the ceiling to save Vicky. Which I'm watching that scene this time, and I'm like, wow, the gas clears out really quick.
Yes, I noticed that too. When the Joker's goons come, it's like, man, gas cleared out pretty damn fast.
Like, it fills in, and then, like, literally 2 seconds after, everybody's plopped dead, they open the door, he's like, all right, guys, let's get to work, and then completely clean of gas.
I love watching them deface the paintings.
It is fun with the Prince song in the background.
That's actually become part of my superhero mix. I like that song so much.
Fair enough. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely little things like that where it's just like there's definitely parts like I'm watching it and being like, man, it's lucky for Joker and his goons that the gas cleared out. Otherwise, those guys would be
really
live.
I mean, you see, well, it's funny. Like, it's used a ventilation system to get the gas in there, but clearly the ventilation system works well enough to also get it out quickly too. So.
I don't know. Maybe when they open the doors, the change in pressure.
Maybe. I don't know.
Pneumatics, aerodynamics, something like that. I have no idea. I have no idea how it works.
But it is funny. Like, and again, once so Batman crashes through, he uses his wonderful toy to help them escape the museum.
And it really is one of the best entrances ever.
It is. It's fantastic.
You can't ask for a more dramatic entrance.
You realize how limited their sets were because you see Batman drive by the movie theater, which is the same movie theater that in the opening of the movie when the parents and the kid are walking by. It's the same movie theater, and then you see the same movie theater like 3 or 4 other times throughout the movie.
Yep.
So clearly they had limited sets to have this car chase.
Hey, it worked. It's something I mean, there are definitely times where I look at it and I can look at the scenes and be like, their skyline has a roof. Like I can sit there. You don't see it obviously, but you can clearly tell that it's completely. The reason why it's so dark is because there's a roof. There's no way you can even see the sun.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the things.
Actually, that's kind of intentional, though.
I think it's one of the things that really shows its age because we're so used to like today's car chases, like especially with movies like Fast and Furious and stuff like that. I know a bunch of like car websites are saying like the car chase from Bullet is still like the greatest car chase of all time, and I watch and I'm like, this isn't anything that impressive though. But for some reasons, just like people still love the Bullet car chase. Here I'm watching it and I'm like, all right, it's fun. Thankfully they keep it short, and that bulldozer or that piece of heavy machinery.
Front end loader.
And then shields.
I love that. The shields.
But I honestly feel like for this action scene at the alley fights between Batman and the goons, Joker's goons, there is definitely the highlight of the action scene.
Definitely. They actually kind of have like a little like Indiana Jones scene there.
Yeah. Definitely. And instead of a gun, he just kicks them. Instead of a gun, he just kicks them.
Yeah, just boots him in the face.
Yeah.
The guy said they're like swinging his sword, like ah, and Batman just boom, one kick in the face. Guy flips over. It's like done. The end.
And it's pretty ballsy of Batman to call Vicky out on her weight, saying that she's a little bit more than 108.
What's he gonna do? He's Batman. It's just like, wait, you gonna go find me? You gonna do something about this? You don't even know where I live.
Well, clearly she does.
Yes. She finds out eventually. Which
was another thing that irked me this time watching it was, so he drives her to the Batcave the first time, presumably she has no idea what forest she's in.
Nope, no idea.
And then you have another great scene. I like it. I mean, it's. I've heard other people discuss it. It's in the scene in Vicky's apartment when he tries to tell her he's Batman, and then the Joker interrupts it. When he goes, "I'm nuts," it's. I don't know if that's Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, that's a little. It's definitely kind of surprising, that scene.
Right. But I also
even now I'm just like, where's that coming from?
But I think it's because he flat out tells him too. When he first walks up to Joker, he goes, "I know who you are," and it's because he knows he's Jack Napier and he knows he's the guy that killed his parents. I think that's why he's able to, be more animated than.
Well, at that time, he doesn't know yet that Jack Napier is the guy who murdered his parents. He knows that he's Jack Napier, but he does not know that.
I thought he knew at that point.
No, in fact, that's the scene where he realizes it, because that's when Jack says have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? And he's like, what? That's when he realizes. Before that, he just knows that he's Jack Napier. He doesn't know that Jack Napier is the man who murdered his parents.
Okay.
He kind of gets that clue with the line, but it's pretty much with the flashback when Joker's throwing it down, throwing down the challenge to him. He sees and he kind of pauses the broadcast. Batman apparently had DVR well before any of us ever did. He pauses the broadcast and he sees that grin, and that's when he has the flashback, and that's when you see him. He kind of has. Wait a minute, let me get my glasses to do this properly. That's when he has that realization that this is the same man. He recognizes the smile. He's like, this is the same guy who murdered my parents.
Sure, but I think my point is it's because of that, knowing who he is.
Yes.
That he's able to be more animated in his interaction with him.
But there's still part of me that's like, yeah, he's obviously Batman. If you really wanted to, he could probably, beat the crap out of all of those guys. But it's like, at that point, I think to myself, what's he planning to do? I mean, he's got the poker. If he really want to try and reach out, you could probably hit him with it. But
the goons are right there. He's not going to get far.
Yeah, it's like, you know that he's Jack Napier. You know he's carrying. So it's like, unless, at that point, threatening him is not going to do anything. You might as well just clunk him with it and just try and take out the goons afterwards. I just found myself very confused. Like, what's your end game here? What's your strategy?
Right. So, but that's the scene where he's trying to tell Vicky that he's Batman, but he doesn't. And then all of a sudden, he's just hanging out there in his jeans and turtleneck. You know, he's putting on his Steve Jobs outfit. And although I think that was before Steve Jobs adopted that outfit.
So maybe he's impersonating Bruce Wayne. Maybe.
But I think he's still wearing lots of suits and stuff at that point in the public. But he's just chilling out in the Batcave, and then all of a sudden Vicky Vale walks in, and it's like, Alfred, are you just like letting anybody into the Batcave?
I kind of want to say this for
he knocked on the door and was like, "Where's Bruce?" He's like, "Go, follow me." You know.
That's one of the things I love about this is the interaction between him and Alfred. And Alfred, keeps kind of dropping some really blatant hints. He's like, she's quite resilient, sir.
Yeah.
And quite special. And Bruce is kind of like, you know what, Alfred, why don't you marry her? You like her so much.
He also suggests later on, after that, later on, towards right before the final battle sequence, Alfred suggests to stop being Batman. He's like, I already stopped. Pretty much, I'm not saying this word for word. I don't know the exact quote. But he's like, I already saw you. Both your parents die. I only have a few years left. I don't want to see you die too. And as he's staring at the Batman's outfit, he's pretty much, and he's closing the door on it. He's pretty much saying, I think you should hang up being Batman.
He's only been doing it for a few months.
Yeah. It's like Alfred, like it's as well as Michael Goo, or how you pronounce his last name.
Goff, I believe.
As much as he is our Alfred, like Michael Caine isn't my Alfred now, and like it's always when you say Alfred, if it's not like one of the animated Alfreds, it's this guy.
Yep.
He doesn't really seem to support Bruce's endeavor as Batman in this, at least in this movie. I think he does more so in the next three. But in this one, he's kind of like, I accept that you're doing it. I'll let this lady know that you're doing it. But if you want to hang up the cowl, I could support that.
It's funny it's funny seeing his stance on Bruce being Batman here, as opposed to what you see in the later ones. Particularly, when it comes to Robin, where he's like, literally, there's a scene where Bruce is like, and you are encouraging him.
Yeah.
Here, he's
just like, I'm not telling him to do it. I'm just giving up. I'm saying if you want to be Robin,
hey,
be Robin.
It's funny with here. He's like, I don't want to see you die too, and then a few movies later, he's like, here you go. Here's your costume.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very nice moment as far as like just to show the relationship and how close they are. After seeing them joke around at the dinner with Vicky and telling the horse story. I mean, that was great to show their relationship and establish that he's not just a butler; he's a friend and a father figure.
Yeah. Bruce even says to him, like, which he is like, oh, where's your family? He's like, Alfred is my family.
Right. But with this scene, and after showing showing Vicky the Batcave and then closing the door, it's like, I understand the sentiment, and it's definitely Alfred to be like, I don't want to lose you, but it also doesn't feel like it'd be Alfred to say that he should just hang up the cowl.
Yeah.
I think he does do that. I mean, I think, not to jump into another Batman movie, but I think they kind of discuss that. They flat out do discuss that in Dark Knight Rises. That's why Alfred leaves. But that was after his whole 8 years off thing, and again, that's a completely other conversation.
Yes, it is.
But this is also the introductory movie where that was the third one, and they'd been through a bunch of adventures. Here, it's like Yeah, you've caught some bad guys who are stealing money, but I don't think you should go up against this Joker guy. And if you want to just quit altogether, I could support that. It's Alfred, but it's not Alfred, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you could understand why he would do it, but at the same time, we've just seen so often that Alfred isn't, openly encouraging it, but he understands that he understands that that this is important to Bruce. That Bruce feels like this is my way of trying to prevent what happened to me happening to anybody else.
Right. So, what do you think? Because we've pretty much gone through most of the movie now, at least the highlights of it. Um, the parade / climactic showdown between Batman and Joker. Does it still live up to like what you remember as watching it as a kid, or has it gotten any cheesier after 25 years of watching it?
Not really. Part of me feels like it was longer, but it's not like it's. I watch it and everything is in place. It's not like I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember this scene. It's all fitting into place, but there's part of me, maybe it's because I was younger, that expected it to be longer. On the other side of it, though, I am for the first time realizing just how largely incompetent Joker's henchmen are, with the exception of that one dude who is swinging the hook around. Because you got the one guy who, I don't know where the hell he's flipping over, but he flips over like the battlements at the top of the church, clicks his heels together, and out pop these swords, and Batman just has like a plate on his palm that he just kind of extends out, so the guy's like junk crashes into it, and the guy just drops like a stone.
Yep. And then the next guy tries to jump up from behind him and just goes right through the floor.
Yeah, and then you get the big bald guy who's like, ah! Tries to pounce on Batman, misses, hits the floor, and just plummets to his doom. And I remember I was watching that, and I'm just like, wow, you guys suck at this.
Yep.
That's all the guy who gets the hook and is actually really giving a fight to Bruce.
But I feel like that's how they usually treat henchmen. It's almost like the annoying obstacle that the hero has to go through to get to the villain, in this case being Joker.
Yeah.
It's like they're just like, all right, we're gonna bother you for a few minutes before you can get to him, and I feel like that's exactly what this was.
Yeah, but I feel like part of me feels like in other movies that he actually really fights these guys. Yeah,
sure.
They're not gonna be. This isn't gonna be some 10-round knockdown drag out like he has in Dark Knight Rises with Bane. This isn't gonna be one of those kinds of fights.
Right.
But I mean, you kind of expect them to be a little bit capable of providing some resistance. But I just remember watching that scene. It's like, okay. I mean, I suppose it's kind of one thing. Batman Returns is good for this, where he's literally beating up a dozen clowns in one place. But here, it's a small handful of guys. You figure that'd be something a little bit more than this.
One at a time. It's not even like he's fighting 5 guys at once.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he fighting 5 guys, one guy hits him, boom, drops him, boom, drops another guy. But these things are all coming one at a time, and he with the exception of the one guy with the hook, he must have flown with these guys.
Give the guy credit. Give the guy credit who crashed through the floor, because he was clearly coming down with a little bit of force, and
he was a big dude.
It was an old church that was falling apart. He was bound to fall through the floor.
He was, but I just sit there and I mean I've seen that scene a million times, but this is the first time I'm watching it. It's like, what a jackass! He just fell right through the floor. I can't help, but I never really sat there and laughed at it this much before. But this time he's like, and just crashes, and it's like, way to go, genius.
They're goons. What do you expect?
I mean, the guy with the swords. I've been laughing at that one since I was like 8 or 9. I mean, good lord. Batman's just like, yeah, you got these fancy swords. I've got a foot that I'm putting in your face. The end. I mean, that guy's like, take Batman, great at all your fancy moves.
From their previous fight in the alley. It's kind of like let's take the choreography from that one and like recycle it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, because you got the guys like flipping through the air. Batman's like, oh yeah, boom, just like palms the guy and just drops him.
But it works, and it's always fun seeing the final confrontation between Batman and Joker up on the roof there, and hanging out on the ledge. And
if you really want to see Joker be crazy, there's where you see it.
That's the part.
He's completely off the deep end by that point. I mean, between Batman punching him in the face and him spitting out the shattering teeth.
And we do learn that Batman apparently would hit a man with glasses. So,
yes.
So be careful.
So any of you Poindexters out there think you control Batman, not gonna happen.
Yeah. But what do you think of them, more or less, to the best of our knowledge, killing off Joker? Because I mean, they clearly just see him there lying on the ground. You know he's fallen, and anybody with common sense would realize that would kill you. And they find the laugh box in his pocket.
Oh, I love that.
You can you can safely assume Joker's dead. Do you like that they kill off him, or would you rather had another trip to Arkham Asylum and the possibility that Joker could come back in a future installment?
I mean, there are a couple of things about that. The first being that this being my introduction to Batman, this was initially how I thought it worked. The very idea that they would get arrested, go to Arkham, and get sprung was alien to me at the time. To me, I figured this is how it works. Batman fights the villain dies. The end.
Not true, because if you and I are probably coming off of watching like Superman, and yes, Superman 2, Zod and his buddies there, die in the Fortress of Solitude, but in the first Superman the movie, his villain being Lex, he doesn't kill Lex, he brings Lex to jail.
True. But at least for me, this. When you and I watched it at your place a couple of years ago, that was the first time I'd seen it.
The first time you'd seen Superman?
Yes.
I forget that aspect of it, but sure.
So to me, again, this is how it worked. It wasn't until I saw the animated series that I really began to understand this idea of them going to Arkham, where they would eventually escape, and I think to myself, man, security at Arkham must absolutely suck, because these guys get sprung out like every week.
Right.
But at the same time, looking at it now, you can understand why they wouldn't even open up the possibility, because the chances of them getting Jack to come back to do it would probably have been pretty small.
It's true.
And if there's one thing that we have seen in a lot of series like this, is that the fans, myself included, love consistency. This is why when people, it always kind of annoys me, people like, oh, there's just this little change, why are you getting so bent out of shape? We like consistency. When you have an actor who plays a character in a movie like this, if it becomes any sort of movie series, you like having the consistency of that actor coming back and being that character a second or third or fourth time. This suddenly happens to be something different. It's just like,
especially like here, it's like, all right, so you could assume if say 1989 Batman, Joker lives, goes to Arkham Asylum, instead of dying, Batman somehow, while he saves Vicky and they're swinging from the tower, he also saves Joker and he's swinging and gets captured. Hypothetical situation. And then they do Returns and Forever, and they keep those guys, those movies pretty much as they were. They could reference the Joker's in Arkham. In Son of Batman, they're walking through Arkham, and you hear someone just laugh as the Joker, which was a really nice little reference. You hear someone flicking a coin to reference Two-Face.
Yeah.
You could do something like that, and just if as they bring the Riddler to Arkham and Forever, you could hear Joker's laugh or whatever. So say you're 4 or 5 movies later from '89 Batman. Do you still want it to be Jack, or would you accept that now Jack's 10 years older, might not want to do it? Would you accept someone else playing Joker?
If we're in a hypothetical situation where all the other movies, that immediately followed the '89 Batman, happened, same cast and all that other stuff.
Yep. Everything's the same except that Joker lives. And it's taking
at that point, yes, I could accept the idea of Joker still being there. In fact, when Batman Returns, or not Batman Returns, when Batman and Robin came out, there was part of me at the time, seeing the scene where they bring Freeze into Arkham, and they're showing all the other stuff that they have, like the archive of Arkham, I guess you want to call it, where they got the storeroom of all the other villains' stuff. You see Joker's purple suit, and there was a part of me at the time who was just like, Joker's dead. So...
Yeah, I've never heard of, the Hob Joker.
Yeah. But, looking at this, today from a more practical perspective, yeah, if all the things were the same, yeah, I could have accepted the idea of them, of Joker getting arrested somehow and ending up in Arkham. But at the same time,
this is a superhero movie, so while Joker's presumed dead, and you flat out see that he's more or less dead. It's still a superhero movie that's, by some crazy coincidence, he's still alive. They'd have to come up with some really interesting way of that happening.
I can't think of one.
No, but I'm saying it's a comic book thing. You could have the return of the Joker somehow.
But having said that, realistically, as much as I would accept the idea of him being arrested, with the tone of these movies, of the Tim Burton ones, the idea of trying to imagine this movie without him dying doesn't quite compute.
Sure.
In fact, it's part of the reason why I got so annoyed with Batman and Robin was because I had a certain expectation at the time that at least one of the villains dies.
Right.
It was dark enough, and I
would you say Batman and Robin was dark?
Well, no, I'm saying that even Batman Forever was just dark enough that and from Batman Forever and its predecessors, they were dark enough that it's like, okay, this is not going to be a happy ending. People are going to die.
Presumably Two-Face dies, but Riddler lives.
Yes, but let's have said at least one.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I hated Batman and Robin so much, was that to me it seems like a happy ending, and it's just like, in all of its predecessors, you didn't have no happy ending.
Yeah.
The villain died.
It would be fun to return to all of these, and obviously Returns would be next for us to discuss.
Yeah.
But just quickly from Returns, presumably the Penguin dies, but as you see at the very end, that Catwoman's still with us.
Yeah.
So it seems like they did exactly what you said with at least Returns and Forever, where at least one of them dies.
Yeah.
And if you, I think it's if you watch the bonus scene, behind the scenes stuff on Batman and Robin, even Joel Schumacher says like Warner Brothers rushed him to do it, and they wanted to make it just so they could sell toys. So I think they wanted to, make it more kid friendly, and that's why probably both Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy live. You can kind of say that Bane died, but it's more that Bane got unplugged. It's not clear if the guy who would become Bane when the poison gets injected into him lives or dies, but Bane himself more or less is dead.
Yeah.
There you go.
But even in that, I mean,
it's still not the climax you want in that movie.
Well, I mean, Bane was such a minor. He wasn't even a villain. He was a henchman.
True.
And by that point, I had seen enough of the Batman animated series to know who Bane was. And be like, no, Bane is a villain. He is not a henchman. He's not Oddjob or something, which is kind of what they turned him into. The idea of
Oddjob's a little bit cooler though. He's got the hat.
Yeah, Oddjob was cooler. But it's just like Bane dying in that. Like that has as much significance to me as
Bob the Goon getting shot.
Yeah, as Bob. All right, it's like nobody cares because he's the henchman.
Right.
You expect the henchman to die, and him dying is not anything significant because he's the henchman. He's not actually the villain.
Right.
If someone were to say to me, if I were to sit there and present this argument of one of the villains dying, and someone from the studio is like, well, Bane died, I'd be like, no. Bane is not the villain. Not even close to the villain in that movie. All right? Even if it was just Ivy who died, okay, it'd be like, that's fine. Somebody croaked. One of the villains croaked. Not one of the henchmen who didn't really do anything except grunt and knock down stuff. All right?
Yeah.
That whole thing's a train wreck. I would have fun getting angry at how much of a train wreck that movie was.
We can definitely go there this year. We'll definitely try and get through all of them this year. But to wrap things up on 89 Batman, I feel like you have to call it 89 Batman because if you just say Batman, people are like, well, which one? But the movie is just called Batman. Just to wrap things up, with all the other, obviously you said this was your introduction to Batman. With everything else you've read and watched, scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate Batman starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson?
I might even be willing to give this a 9.
For sentimental reasons?
Well, part of that, but I kind of gauge it from the other ones, from its successors. And as much as I enjoy Batman Returns, and I really do, it's Batman beating up a bunch of goofy-looking clowns. What's not to love about it? As much as I love that one, there is that part which we discussed earlier about it being far less Batman-centric than what one would expect.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that and being like, okay, taking that into account, it's like, okay, I'd rate Batman Returns probably as.
Well, we can get into that when you get into Batman Returns.
Well, I'm just saying this is why I'm saying a 9. I'd be giving a fairly high rating to Batman Returns because I enjoy that one, but I know that it is not as good as this one. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm going to give Batman, let's say for argument's sake, I were to give Batman Returns a 7, an 8, maybe, then this has got to be at least an 8, if not a 9 or higher. I'm not going to put it below that.
Right.
So I feel like it's not quite enough for me to give it a 10. But I feel like
it's definitely
fair.
You definitely notice its flaws at this point, and again, with it being 25 years later, and everything that's changed with the character and what we've learned and seen otherwise, especially with the Chris Nolan Batmans and the animated series and the movies. Like, if you haven't watched the Dark Knight Returns animated movie, check it out. Year One was pretty cool. Definitely some other cool Batman flicks out there. It's tough to look at, Batman the same way I did as when I was 5 years old watching it. Just being like, wow, it's Batman,
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like when Levitt and I watched Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. As a kid, I loved that movie. It was probably the one I watched the most. And when as an adult now, I watch it and I notice all the ridiculousness of it, but I still enjoy it because, brings me back to my childhood. I'm like, this is a fun movie, even with Superman rebuilding the Great Wall of China with his eyes.
Nuclear man.
Levitt watches it as a 20-something for the first time, just like you said you watched Superman the movie for the first time as a 20-something. And so he's watching the movie through that prism and didn't enjoy it. So like I said, Batman, with Hughes, I still have fond memories of watching it as a kid. Still one of my favorites. I would rate it more like an 8. I think a 9's giving it a little bit too much praise.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's still a great installment of Batman in the overall 75-year history of the character. And we probably wouldn't have the Chris Nolan Batmans that we have today if it weren't for this movie.
That is true. I feel like, in fact, I may have even said this to my brother when I had initially read the article, but pretty much the Christopher Nolan Batmans were able to exist because of the base that was built up through Tim Burton's Batman movies.
Right.
I mean, even if you were to accredit that base stemming a lot from the animated series, that still doesn't exist.
That's still coming because of, the production design on this one and setting the tone.
Yes.
And I think following the Adam West Batman, which the Adam West Batman is a lot of fun. That movie, for as ridiculous as it is, it's a lot of fun. And turning everybody into dust, amazing. That being said, it is much more of a satire and comical than where I feel because of the Chris Nolan Batmans, we go back to watching this one and can laugh at it a little bit more because it's obviously not as serious as those ones.
Yes.
But then you compare it to the Adam West ones and you're like, wow, this movie's pretty darn serious. So I like that it's kind of in between the two tones of the stories we've seen on screen. All right. I think that will wrap up our conversation on Batman. For New Movie Night Spotlight, I'm your host, Dave Lindsay.
I'm Liam O'Leary.
Have a good one, folks.
What up?